Good morning, friends. Today we will be having discussion on the topic that is mycoplasma for the BSc first year student in the paper that is diversity of cryptogams first. Friends, we have studied viruses, bacteria, and we have seen the details, the characters, and the cell structure of both these organisms. Today we will be dealing with the mycoplasma. Mycoplasma are the smallest organism as like the bacteria and viruses. But these organisms intermediate between the virus and the bacteria means mycoplasma are bigger than the virus but smaller than the bacteria. What is mycoplasma? Albert Frank was the scientist who termed this organism as a mycoplasma in the year 1889, and he assumed mycoplasma as a fungus formation. Myco means fungus and plasma means form, that is formation. While seeing the general characteristics of this organism or history of this organism, the mycoplasma were isolated from the cathode, means it was discovered from the field of cathode, were suffering from the disease known as pleuropneumonia. Mycoplasma is also called PPLO, that is pleuropneumonia like organisms, whereas it is also called as MLO, that is mycoplasma like bodies. Mycoplasma are very simple and the smallest free living organisms. The basic or characteristic in this mycoplasma, we found that the cell wall is absent in the mycoplasma, whereas in Monera kingdom, talking about the prokaryotes, cell wall is present, but in mycoplasma, cell wall is absent. We know that mycoplasma lies in the kingdom Monera in the class of molecules. But the cell membrane is made up of three layers of the mycoplasma. These mycoplasma like organisms are pleomorphic in nature. What is pleomorphic? Pleomorphic means the organism has ability to change the shape and size of the cell. It is unicellular organism, that is single celled organisms. Uni means single celled organisms. In the pleomorphic nature, the mycoplasma like bodies change their structure and the shape due to the absence of cell wall. We know that the cell wall helps to maintain the shape and the structure of the cell. But here, as lacking the cell wall and presence of cell membrane, due to the lacking of cell wall, the cell is unable to be stable in for the shape. That is why they change their shape and size. This condition or this situation is known as the pleomorphic in nature. Mycoplasma seems to be saprophyte and the parasites in the nature. They survive on the host cell for their survival, for their reproduction, and for their existence. They need the other host for their further activity. So they are called as heterotrophic in nutrition. Now this mycoplasma, like organisms which are very smallest and minute in the shape and size. Now focusing on the structure of the mycoplasma. We have seen regarding the bacteria in that the very first stage that we see, that is the capsule layer. Next to that cell wall, next to that plasma membrane, and rest the cytoplasm. But in mycoplasma, we see the cell wall is absent, but the cell membrane is present. Next to cell membrane in cytoplasm, in the body of the mycoplasma, there are ribosomes, there are DNA, nucleus is absent here, DNA is free, chromatin like structure. Then you find protein structure, free protein structure in the cytoplasm and the cytoplasmic contents. While having comparison, the ribosome is of 70S type, like we see in the bacteria, that is in prokaryotes. Then the DNA material, deoxyribonucleic acid, that is genetic material, which is single stranded but not bound with the nucleus. That means nucleus is absent in the mycoplasma. So this is the difference between the bacterial cell and the from the viral cell. The history of this mycoplasma shows the scientist named as Pasteur in 1843 isolated this mycoplasma from pleural fluid of the cattle. But this mycoplasma was not isolated for many years. But scientists known as Nockard and Rocks in 1898 have been successfully isolated this mycoplasma like organism with the help of the agar medium. We also called it as PPLO, pneumonia like organism, but this term was given by a scientist, that is Novak, in the 1929. This was the little history of the mycoplasma. We have seen the cell structure as well as we have seen the general characteristics. But what about the reproduction of the mycoplasma? In mycoplasma, reproduction takes by the binary fission and by budding. Regarding binary fission, we have seen in the bacterial cell how the binary fission occurs. How do binary fission occurs? A single cell is divided, the cytoplasmic material plus the genetic material is equally divided into two equal halves, and this process gives rise to the two cells, that is called as the binary fission. Whereas we have seen the budding also. In budding, the genetic material is transformed from one cell to the another cell with the help of the special organelles. So this was the reproduction of the mycoplasma. But it needs a host cell machinery for the survival and for the reproduction. Now, how these mycoplasmal cells are transmitted? We all know that the mycoplasma cause the diseases to humans, animals, as well as to the plant. Whereas talking about the humans, this mycoplasma diseases are spreads. They are contagious diseases. They spread through droplets by sneezing, by coughing. And the most important diseases which is caused, that is known as pneumonia, which cause which affects the lungs in the human beings. Whereas in plant, these mycoplasma like organisms are transmitted by the various factors. They may be biotic factors. We know that there are lots of insects, those who feeds on the plants. For example, the grasshopper. In the grasshopper, the mycoplasma settles in the guts of the grasshopper when it feeds on the infected plant. And this grasshopper visit the different types of species or plants for its feeding. Most of the insects are also one of the transmission agents to transform this mycoplasmal disease. By man also, this disease is transferred while practicing in the farms or by doing the works in the fields of the farmers. These mycoplasma are spread through plants from one plants to the another, from one fields to the another field. These are some of the transmission factors of the mycoplasma. Now, have you heard about this mycoplasma plant diseases? Actually, this mycoplasma is not that much known to the society like bacteria and viruses. These mycoplasma like organisms causes various types of diseases to the plants. Number one, we see the disease in the mulberry plant, in the brinjal plant, in tomato plant, in the Ziziphus mauritiana, commonly we called it as bear, and many more. Now, what are the symptoms of this mycoplasmal disease in the plants? The symptoms are seen on the leaves. Leaves, the number one symptom is that sometimes the multiple number of leaves aggregated or becomes a bunch like. Second one is the mosaic type. The third one, that is bunchy top. The fourth one, the plants become dwarf. The growth of the plant is arrested, which seems to be looks like stunted, and many more. Friends, as we know that in mycoplasma cell wall is absent, it is resistant to many antibiotics such as penicillin. Now we know how these penicillin antibiotics work. Penicillin antibiotic break down the cell wall. But here, due to the lack of cell wall, this antibiotic does not work in the diseases of mycoplasma. But it is resistive or resistant antibiotics such as tetracycline. So friends, today we have seen regarding the mycoplasma, mycoplasma like organisms. They are also called as PPLO or MLO, pleuropneumonia like organism, or mycoplasma like bodies. Myco means fungus and plasma means it is formation, fungus like formation. But it was assumed initially, later on as the scientists have been worked on this organism, the details what we spoke was seen regarding this mycoplasma. While talking about the differences of mycoplasma, differences between bacteria and mycoplasma, the differences we see in the bacteria and mycoplasma, that is the cell wall is present in the bacteria, which is made up of peptidoglycan, whereas In Mycoplasma, cell wall is completely absent. The second difference we see that in bacteria we find the negative as well as positive bacteria, that is gram negative or gram positive bacteria. But in Mycoplasma, staining doesn't exhibit in the Mycoplasma, but we find the gram negative stain in the Mycoplasma bodies. So these are the some basic differences. Bacterial cell is much more larger than the Mycoplasma, and mycoplasmal cells is smallest and minute, ranging above the 250 nm in size, though it is big than the viruses. So friends, as per our syllabus, we have been talked regarding the general characters of the Mycoplasma. You will also see some slides and diagrams of the Mycoplasma in this video or lecture series. Till then, thank you.